What's going on, everybody? Tane with the Digital Realty team of LPT Realty here. Yes, you've heard it right. We have switched brokerages as of this past month, no longer with eXp Realty, and joined LPT Realty. And the reason for that is more beneficial to my clients. So LPT Realty is a new brokerage that is offering a ton of marketing on top of the marketing I'm providing to my clients already, which I really loved because that's going to help your homes get sold for even more and as well quicker. So that's one of the reasons why we switched over. But anyways, I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season, and as well wanted to wish you a happy new year. For 2023, if you do have any real estate goals, this video is going to be for you, because we're going to go over exactly how the market looked in December 2022, and as well how the market looks in comparison to 2021 to 2022, and then what we can possibly foresee in the upcoming future. All right. But aside from that, sorry I've been missing off of YouTube for a couple of months. It's been quite hectic on my end over here with the brokerage switch, and we actually just moved into a bigger home as well. So that move has been hectic. We still got some boxes around in the house, so we all know how that is when it comes to moving. And we also had a holiday party event in December as well at our office. So there was a lot of stuff going on, so I couldn't post any content for the last 2 months. But I'm back, ready to be in action, and look forward to providing you guys more content, and hope this information helps. All right, so now let's dive into it. So 2022 was a very interesting year. And the reason for a lot of it is because 2020, 2021, we saw the craziest real estate market ever. I mean, even outside of real estate, car sales, everything was just an insane market, right? And everything was selling. And that's what led to 2022 inflation coming by, all right? And what we saw, obviously, from 2020, 2021, rates were under 3%. Going into 2022, it was still about that. It was still around that range, 3-4%. However, as inflation hit an all-time high, it took a little while for the trickle effect to happen, right? It took about 4 to 6 months, and that's what we saw towards the end of 2022. So to give you an example of what we saw, in 2022, the first half of the year, we had about 16,872 sales from January to June, all right? And then from July through December, it went down to 14,875. That's a 12% decrease when it comes to sales. And as I mentioned to you, it had a lot to do with the rates. In 2022, we actually saw it go past 7% at one point, all right? And for investors out there, it was actually in the eights, and sometimes we saw it in the 9s for investors. So that's pretty insane if you think about it, all right? And we saw that again more towards the middle of the year, and that's when we started seeing the numbers for what happened towards the end of the year, right? So to give you an example, the median sales price in Hampton Roads for January 2022 was $291,000. It hit a record high of $328,000 in May, all right? And rates at that time were slowly increasing. So what we were seeing, they were still low, but it was slowly increasing. And as well, it was during the hot market, spring, summertime, usually when you see a lot more activity, right? And we saw it jump up by 13% in just literally 4 months. But then what had happened as we saw rates go up, and then the effect of inflation started trickling down, it went down to all the way to $302,000 median sales price in November. Granted, market usually does slow down around that time frame anyway, so we do want to keep that in mind. And I do believe, with the inventory still being at all-time low, it did help out the market as well, to where it didn't just drop like an insane amount, right? And then in December, it actually rebounded up to $306,000. So, but for the overall year of 2022, what we saw was the median sales price had a 7.2% increase overall from January to December. So that is a relatively healthy market. And that's one thing you want to keep in mind, because a lot of people watch the overall news, and a lot of the times in news, they like to generalize the real estate market as an overall. I mean, California is completely different from Virginia, right? Even if you go 30 minutes within Virginia, it's gonna be a different market. And a lot of people forget that it is very localized, and that's why you need a local expert to help you guide you through the market, because of the fact that it's very different, even if you go 30, 45 minutes out, as I mentioned. So that should give you a good idea of how Hampton Roads is going, right? And what we saw as well, the active listings is still at all-time low, right? So from January to June, we had about 18,555 active listings recorded. And then for July through December, the number was 23,602 active listings, so 27% increase, right? And that's definitely a good increase that we saw, but again, it's all-time low. So that's why houses are still selling and the prices are still up, right? And what we saw as well for the first 6 months of the first 6 months of 2022, we saw the median days on market looking like this: 16, 11, 7, 7, 8, 9, right? So it was relatively low. But then as soon as the effect of inflation and the rates going up started happening, right, what we saw was it went, the average, the median days on market from July through December, there were about 12, 15, 18, 19, 20, and 24, all right? So obviously that's nothing crazy, but the media just hypes it up to be a lot more than it needs to be. And I think this is, as I've been mentioning in past videos, is just normalizing. I don't believe there's gonna be a crash based off of the data. If there was a crash, then we'd see prices go down, and as the transaction go down by a good amount, and we're not really seeing that. And we even saw where the inflation rate was 7.5% in January, jumped to 9.1% in June, all right, and it ended up the year in December at 6.3%. So this has a lot to do with the Feds trying to cool down the housing market as well, to make everything affordable, all right? So that's the overall gist of 2022. It was a phenomenal market from what we're seeing till today. Others may say otherwise, but a 7.5% median sales price increase from January to December, to me, that is a healthy market, all right? And now let's dive into December 22 numbers. December 2022, our median days on market had hit an all-time high of the year at 24 days on market. All right, that's still really low in comparison to other years where we've seen it in the 4 to 6 months range. But what a lot of people are paying attention to more is, back in December 2021, the median days on market was 15. That's a year-over-year increase of 60%, which is definitely a hefty number, all right? But it's not all out to be what the media is hyping it up to be, where there's a housing market crash, a bunch of inventory sitting on the market, right? So that's just, the data just doesn't show that. And the month over month, we saw increase from November to December was a 20% increase, right, for the median days on market. So nothing crazy overall. And quite honestly, as I mentioned before, it's just the prices have somewhat corrected, and mortgage rates are somewhat stable. They went up a lot from 2021 to 2022. So you are going to see that trickle effect that we're seeing. Same thing with inflation. But what we are seeing in, for December data, the active residential listing totaled 3,345, and that's 518 fewer than the month prior, and it's up year over year by 19%. So the inventory increase, even though it's up 19%, we are still low on inventory, which is essentially what's helping the market, keep where the prices are staying stable, because the demand is still there. The inventory is not, all right? And even though the demand died down a little bit because of the rates, the inventory is still low. And the pending sales stood at 1,692. That dropped down from 1,913 in November. So that's also down year over year by 31%. from last December, which was at 2,441. And that's some data that you do want to pay attention to, right? Because if this shows you right there the correlation to rates, inventory, and what it looks like the following year, because the rates in December got where they were in the 6% still, right? And inventory went up a little bit as well. And what we are also seeing is settled sales during the month of December was 2,004. That's a 4% increase from 1923 in November. But that's also down 35% from December last year, where it was at 3,092. And again, because it has a lot to do with the rates and as well the inflation, all right? And what we can also see, again, the median sales price of homes sold across the region in December was $306,000. That's up from $302,000 in November and up 5.5% from December 2021, which was at $290,000, right? So we still saw an increase in median sales price, 5.5%. That's phenomenal, right? That's before people used to have to wait like 2 years for that increase. It's happening still. The monthly supply of inventory for December was 1.27%, right? So that's one and close to a half a month, right? A quarter of a month, I guess you could say. So that dropped down from 1.42 in November, but it is higher than the MSI that was recorded last December 2021 at 0.88, all right? But it just goes to show, the market is just really normalizing. It's not even close to normalizing, quite honestly, but it's getting there, right? And the median days on market overall was 24 days. And the residential new construction in the MLS for the month was 277. That's 77 more than the prior month and 29 fewer than 306 in last December. But overall, guys, now is still a great time, whether if you are looking to sell or buy. And for buyers out there, yes, you do have a little more wiggle room negotiation-wise, but don't get it all mixed up with trying to reach too much, because this data does show that it is still a seller's market, all right? And for sellers out there, you do want to be careful with who you're working with as well. You need somebody that's active in the market and knows what's normal with these changes in each market, right? Like I said, 30 minutes out and you could be in a completely different market, and you need someone that is understanding and doing transactions in these markets to guide you through this. Otherwise, you could be leaving thousands of dollars on the table. So whether if you are a seller or buyer and thinking about making a move in 2023, reach out to the Digital Realty team. We've helped just in 2022, we've helped over 53 families buy and sell. And we've also donated over $8,000 to give back to the community. But I share this with you guys because you need somebody to help you out that can guide you through this shift in market to know what is a good deal and what is not, because not everybody's aware of what's actually happening and the data that we just reported, all right? But overall, guys, if you found this information valuable, please hit the like button, because this is for completely free. So this lets YouTube know that we're doing a decent job and people like to tune in, and it allows us to keep providing value back to y'all. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please comment down below, and as well consider subscribing and share this with anyone that might be thinking about making a move in 2023 so they stay educated, all right? But aside from that, hope you all have a prosperous 2023, and thank you again for tuning in. And if you are thinking about making a move, please reach out to us. Let's chat, see if it makes any sense at all for us to possibly work together. But most importantly, see if it makes any sense at all for you to consider even buying or selling this year. All right?